At dawn, she found him lying still beneath the fading stars, his tiny body cold against the earth. And the moment her nose touched his fur, something inside her split wide open like it had once before, when metal doors clanged shut and the only thing left of her cub was the echo of his cry in a place without sky or mercy. She had roared then until her voice broke and no one came, and the world taught her to forget, to bury the ache beneath instinct and dust. But memory has teeth, and it waits in silence, like she waited through long years with no wind, no scent of family, no warmth, only the ache of something missing that she could not name. And now, as the light touched his stillness, her heart screamed again, not in words but in that raw place beyond, language, where grief and hope twist together. And then she heard him. The footsteps, not the cub's, but another softer, older, slower. And when she lifted her eyes, she saw him, a figure at the edge of the rising sun, a shape carved from the past, from a time before the taking, when a boy pressed his hand to a cage and promised things he couldn't stop. And now, he was here, not a boy, not quite a man, but something between, carrying something small in his hand, something worn, something remembered, and she did not run. She only stared, and he knelt slowly, like the earth itself might shatter, and he whispered her name, not aloud, but in the way he looked at her, like he had never stopped searching, never stopped aching. And between them lay the cub breathing now, barely, alive, and everything she had lost, and everything he had tried to save, came rushing back through time, as if none of it had ever truly been gone, only waiting buried beneath the years for this one impossible moment to rise. She wakes before the sun, each day, not because she must, but because she always has the rhythm of survival etched too deep into her bones to forget. And in the hush before light, she walks the same path through the grass, moving like a ghost over familiar ground ears, flicking at sounds that are no threat, nose lifting to scents that mean nothing anymore. But once did, she pauses near the hollow where wind gathers, just so as if expecting a shape to rise from memory. And every morning she lingers there, just a moment longer than needed, not knowing why or knowing too well, then moves on. She hunts, she rests, she drinks from the shallow stream, all with the steady instinct of one who endures but never fully lives. Her body bears no fresh wounds, yet she carries something inside her, heavier than injury. A silence that presses behind her ribs, an ache with no name. Her eyes track the horizon, not with hope, but with habit, because long ago she learned that the ones who leave never return, and still her gaze wanders toward where they vanished. Her movements are precise, her life preserved in routine, yet sometimes when she dreams she feels the warmth of a smaller body pressed close and wakes with a growl, half snarled, half sob that fades before it reaches the sky, and no one hears it. No one ever hears it because grief in the wild has no witnesses, only shadows and the quiet crack of a heart breaking over and over with every dawn that brings nothing back. The moment it happened was not loud. There were no storms, no violence, only the quiet shuffle of boots, the snap of a latch, the cold metal door opening then closing, and her cub was gone. Not even a sound left behind, just the fading warmth where he had curled against her. She searched the corners of the cage, frantic, pressing her body against the bars until her fur tore and blood traced lines along the concrete. She roared. Then a sound so raw it cracked her own bones. A sound meant to tear through distance and reach him wherever they had taken him. But it only bounced back at her, small and useless against steel. The humans did not speak to her. They averted their eyes as if her grief was an inconvenience and not a universe unraveling. She waited for days, maybe longer, refusing food, refusing rest. Her eyes fixed on the door. He would return. She believed this, like breath. Then something changed. Her roar turned to a rasp, her body to stillness, her mind to ash. The door stayed closed and time moved in circles, not forward. The light through the bars shifted, but nothing else did. They fed her, cleaned around her, replaced the straw, but they never gave him back. So she stopped asking. The world outside the cage no longer existed. Only walls, the scent of bleach and the weight of absence. She forgot the taste of wind, the feel of earth. Under her paws and inside her, the part that had once been mother turned to stone. Even when she was finally released, when the gates opened and the sky returned, she was not free. Not truly. She walked the wild with the steps of someone who remembered too much and trusted nothing. Her eyes scanned the land, but not for prey, for what had been taken, for what would never be returned. And though no chains bound her, she carried them all the same, not around her limbs, but deep in the marrow of her being, where his cry still echoed unanswered, and the silence stretched year after year, thick as fog and heavy as death. Let me pause here for just a moment. Tell me, where are you listening from? Have you ever had someone, a person or maybe even an animal, remember you after years apart? That kind of connection that time couldn't erase. If this story touches something in you, don't forget to follow. There's so much more ahead, and every chapter is a step deeper into the heart. It started with a photograph curled at the edges, worn soft by time, tucked in a box. He hadn't meant to open the image, grainy but unmistakable, a lioness behind wire. Her eyes locked on the lens, wide and burning, with something too human, too familiar. He hadn't seen it in years, maybe decades. But the moment it met his gaze, the world cracked and the years between collapsed in on themselves. He remembered the sound she made when they took the cub, how it echoed through the concrete, how he had screamed too, but no one heard him either. He remembered how he used to sit outside her cage, reading aloud, whispering promises he couldn't keep, and how one morning both she and the cub were gone, like they had never been there, and he had spent so long trying not to. Look back, that when the scent came, the one that lingered in the collar he found by chance in the back of a warehouse, his hands shook so hard he could barely hold it. It still smelled like earth and milk and loss. And suddenly the questions he had, buried, came roaring back. Had she survived? Did she still remember him? Did she still wait? He told himself not to hope, not to dream, but his body moved before his fear could stop it. He followed reports of a rewilded lioness with strange habits. One who didn't quite belong, who patrolled the same ground every day as if searching for something. And now here he was, standing at the edge of dawn, holding the collar, the last piece of a promise broken too long ago. And when he saw her hunched over the cub, licking with frantic tenderness, he knew it was her. Not because of her scars or her size, but because something ancient in her eyes gripped something ancient in him and held on. She did not run. She did not growl. She only stared, and he stepped forward, slowly, as if crossing into a dream. And when he knelt, when he whispered not words, but presence, the collar in his hand, she looked at him, and the years between them breathed for the first time in forever. The grass shifts in the stillness, his steps, barely parting the earth as he moves forward, slow as breath, unsure as prayer. The collar in his hand trembling with memory. He does not speak, not yet, because words feel too fragile for this moment. So he kneels, not out of fear, but reverence. And when their eyes meet, it's not shock, it's something deeper, something like recognition slowed by disbelief. She stares at him, unmoving, the cub between them, limp and quiet, but not gone. And he dares to lift the collar just slightly, the metal tag catching the early light, and that is when her nostrils flare, catching it. Not the object, but the scent beneath it. Old salt, old warmth, the imprint of a boy who once sat outside the bars, whispering through the wire. His voice a lifeline in a world that tried to forget her, and something shifts in her posture. Not threat, not defense, but memory. She lowers her head, slowly breathes in again and again. Her eyes narrow, not in warning, but in focus. And in that silence something clicks, not loud, but irrevocable. And he feels it too. the way her gaze softens by a fraction, the way the space between them stops pulsing with danger and begins to hum with something else, something broken but alive. His voice cracks when he speaks. I brought him back. I didn't know if you were still here, if you'd still remember. And the words hang there fragile and exposed. She leans down again toward the cub. And just as his fingers graze the earth, the cub exhales a thin thread of breath. Barely a whisper, but real, and her body responds before thought her shoulders draw back. Her head lifts, and then it comes the sound, not of sorrow, but of triumph. A roar that erupts from the deepest part of her and tears through the sky, shaking leaves, rattling bone. It is not for pain, it is for life. It is for him, the cub, for the man, for herself, and the man breaks open. He falls forward into the earth and weeps into the grass, into her fur, into years he cannot return, and she lets him, because she knows him not by sight, but by soul. And though the world around them stays quiet, everything inside them turns, shifts, reconnects. The moment stretches wide, timeless and full, and in it, nothing is undone, but everything is seen. Everything is heard, and everything is finally answered. She stays close to him now, not out of fear or uncertainty, but because something inside her has begun to loosen the tightly coiled thread of survival that once pulled her away from every sound. Every presence has begun to soften. The cub rests against her side, small, warm breathing, and her paw curls instinctively around him, not protectively, but possessively, like a memory made flesh, and the man sits nearby, his movements slow, deliberate, offering no threat, only time. He doesn't speak often, and when he does, it's in a hush, as if not to wake something fragile between them. Sometimes he reaches out and lets his hand rest lightly against her shoulder, and though she flinches at first, each time she holds a little longer before pulling away. One day he laughs soft and disbelieving when the cub wobbles toward him on unsteady legs, head tilted in curiosity, and she watches him carefully, her eyes alert, not guarding, but witnessing. And when the cub nuzzles the man's knee, then returns to her, she does not pull him back. She simply exhales, a breath that carries years of held sorrow, and the man smiles the way people do when the ache in their chest finally breaks open to let light in. They do not need language to speak. What has been remembered is enough. She begins to move differently, not cautiously, but with presence. She lifts her head when the wind stirs. She blinks slowly when the man stands nearby, no longer seeing danger in his shape, but something remembered, something trusted. And when he follows her at a distance through the grass, she allows it, because part of her now walks in step with him, not out of duty, but because some part of her, once carved by loss, has begun to fill again with the shape of what was never truly gone, only waiting, and in the quiet moments as the sun rises, and the cub sleeps pressed between them. There is no need to mark the time that passed, or name the pain that carved them. Instead, there is only breath and warmth and the small, unshakable truth that some bonds are not broken by silence or years. They only sleep, and when the world is ready, they wake and live again. Some bonds ask for nothing. They do not shout or demand to be seen. They wait, through distance, through silence, through the slow turning of seasons. They endure in memory, in instinct, in the quiet pull that brings two souls back to the same place, at the same time, for no reason but love. She no longer looks over her shoulder. He no longer carries the weight alone, and somewhere between her steady breath and his open hands, what was broken begins to mend, because true connection doesn't vanish. It finds its way, through cages, through time, through the ache of all that was lost, to return in the one moment that matters most. And when it does, it doesn't need to speak. It simply stays.